Are we ready? Okay. Let's go ahead then and call the Johnston City Council meeting number 23-03 to order.
Ready.
Samantha, roll call, please.
Ready. Burkhart,
Here.
Cope,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Martin.
Here. I want to welcome everyone that is in the audience this evening. Everybody's on this side. It feels like the ship is going to tip over, but anyway.
Nobody's from the grooves, man.
I want to welcome everyone that's in the audience this evening. If you are here for an item that is on the agenda, we would ask for you to wait for that item to come up and address the council at that time. If you're here for an item that is not on the agenda, there will be an opportunity under public communications, which is coming up here shortly, and you can address the council then. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a lot of young people in the audience this evening. We'd like to invite the young people to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if it's not mandatory, you don't have to come forward if you don't want to, but I would certainly welcome all of you that are here this evening to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Mike, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Mayor and Council, there's a few changes. First, on item 7A, the applicants requested this item be removed from the agenda. This is related to the stormwater management facilities maintenance agreement and the site plan for the Gateway Crossing. We anticipate that'll be on the agenda for February 20th. And then additionally, Councilmember Cope has requested that item 5U, this is consider approval of the collective bargaining agreement and contract between the city and Teamsters local union 238 for the period of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2028. And then additionally, what is listed on the agenda is 5AA, which is actually 5Z would be the correct agenda item number, considering fixing date for a public hearing for the city of Johnston, Iowa for approval of the resolution 2023-2024 maximum property tax dollars and providing a publication thereof. So both of those items will move to non-consent agenda.
Okay.
Jim, did you say that it was 7D was also going to be
7A.
7A? Okay, thank you.
Council, any other changes to the agenda? Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
So
moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Samantha, vote please.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Ready.
yes,
Motion passed. Moving on to public communications. We have two scheduled public communications this evening, and the first is the introduction and oath of office of Johnston Police Officer Nicholas Collins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you've heard from me before, one of the greatest pleasures that I have in my career is to be able to bring new talent into this organization, and tonight is no exception. I want to give you a little bit of background on Officer Nicholas Collins that's joining us, and then we will have his oath of office. So Officer Collins began his career with the Johnston Police Department just a few days ago, January 30th. He's an out-of-state lateral transfer candidate coming to us from the Arapahoe County, Colorado Sheriff's Office, which serves more than 900 square miles and covers a portion of the Denver metropolitan area. So why Johnston, right? He's coming home to build his career. Nick grew up in Central Iowa, graduating from Dallas Center Grimes High School. On graduation, he enlisted for 8 years in the United States Navy and served honorably as a Navy corpsman. After 4 years of his enlistment, he was appointed to the prestigious Naval Special Warfare Development Group to join the East Coast Special Operations Community as a combat medic. In addition to Nick's considerable military training, law enforcement experiences as a patrol deputy, and time served as a park ranger for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Officer Collins maintains his EMT certification and holds associate's degrees in science and criminal justice. Nick is looking forward to making a strong impact in your community. He will be driven, intentional, and purposeful with his professionalism as he works to build this community to be a little bit safer. With that, Mayor, if you would swear the oath, please. Families welcome to grab photographs if they choose. We'll also.
Reminding myself that I need my glass. You raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Nicholas Collins,
I, Nicholas Collins,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of the office of police officer
of office of police officer,
in Johnston, Iowa,
Johnston, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
and I will hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
Make it official. Take some pictures, but before we do that, I want to welcome you to Johnston, back to Central Iowa as well. Your resume is very impressive. And we're really, whoops. Should I start over or did that? Okay. Well, again, I just want to welcome you back to Central Iowa, to Johnston, Iowa. We are really excited to have you here. Your resume is incredible. And, the chief always delivers for us, some of the most outstanding police officers we could ever imagine having here in Johnston. And you have certainly lived up to our expectations and the chiefs and the communities as well. So I want to welcome you here and look forward to working with you. You bet. And if you want to introduce your family to us.
Micah.
Okay.
You can call her.
Fantastic. Welcome to Johnston. About the whole family. And a girl.
No, they won't. I just send them directly to him. So these don't go on a Facebook page.
Right now. We also sold with some land in Johnston.
I'm gonna take those as well. And the next item on the agenda is just as exciting as the last one was. We have the privilege and opportunity this evening to recognize 4 Johnston High School students for being selected as candidates in the 2023 U.S. Presidential Scholar Program. And I'm going to invite them to come forward as well. This is just absolutely incredible. I'm sitting at home. Is it on now? I was sitting at home, maybe a couple, 3, 4 weeks ago, at about 9 o'clock at night, and I get this email from the Johnston School District saying, you need to be aware of this. We have 4 students that have been selected to be candidates for the 2023 U.S. Presidential Scholar Program. I couldn't believe it. And I said, I immediately responded to that email and I said, we gotta get them to the Johnston City Council. We need to recognize them. And so anyway, I'm really pleased that you're here this evening, and you're probably going to have to help me just a little bit with your names. They're almost as hard as my name. And so if you could just bear with me a little bit, but Arusha Gupta, Arushi Gupta, Ishan Shandani, Shandani, Anita Denakar, very good, and Ellen Kang, fabulous. Well, these are 4 just incredible students that we have in the Johnston School District that have all been selected as candidates to receive the 2023 U.S. Presidential Scholar Program. And this is a really big deal. What I've been told is that 5,000 students across the nation are selected to be candidates for this program. And that is 5,000 out of 3.6 million students in our high schools across the country. Ultimately, about 160 will receive the Presidential Medallion in June. And I don't know what the process is for that selection, and maybe somebody can tell me.
Well, there's like 5 essays you have to write, and then you have to get like a teacher recommendation. Yeah.
Qualify for this, but five essays. Wow. And so do you have your 5 essays completed? All of you? Okay, you're still working on those. You just kind of do that in your spare time, right? Because you've got all of your studies that you're dealing with as well. Well, I also looked at the additional information that came out, and not only are these, just a representative of a few across the country who are selected for this this recognition, but only 65 high school students in Iowa are selected for this recognition. 64 across the entire state of Iowa. I have no idea how many high schools we have in Iowa, but we have 4 of the 64 right here. That is amazing. That is absolutely incredible. Before we take pictures, I want to give each of you an opportunity to just, again, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is it, what is it that what is it that you're working so hard to study in school, and what are your educational goals and your career goals, your life goals? Why don't you just do a little sharing with us?
I'm Arushi, and my biggest passion is bioethics. So a lot of my extracurriculars revolve around social justice. I'm the executive director of Iowa SLI. I've been involved with the Iowa Youth Congress, and we worked to almost pass an environmental bill, but then it wasn't written up, but we did get bipartisan support for that. I worked on the International Summit on Student Voice, which is set to occur in 2023. And then on the biology aspect, I co-founded Diabetes Educational Foundation.
My name is Ishan Chandani. In terms of career goals, I'm not 100% certain as to what direction I want to go in, but I'm super interested in the law, and I'm also super interested in medicine. So I'm leaning towards forensic psychiatry, which is kind of a field that's always interested me. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Alan Kang, and I plan to study computer science and data science, but I also want to major in environmental science, and that's because I want to use my studies to make a difference in the world. And I also really love music and doing things with my hands. And I want to give a shout out to my mom.
I'm Anita Dinakar.
I'm also very passionate about social justice. I'm one of the leaders of the Community of Racial Equity Club at Johnston. And another thing I'm passionate about is technology. So I plan to study engineering and engineer solutions that predominantly affect marginalized communities.
Wow. You know, I am humbled to be in your presence because you are, you know, you're still so very young and you've already accomplished so much and you just have so much, you know, of your lives ahead of you. And you know, you know, it's obvious that you're just going to be able to do so much. And, you know, we're just really proud to have, you know, young people like you, students in our schools that are just so outstanding and doing so incredibly well. Again, you're a great example of the quality of students that we have in our Johnston School District. You know, I brag about our students all the time. You know, our students excel in the academics, just, and you're a great example of it. Our kids excel in athletics and they excel in the performing arts. I mean, just all the way across the board, we have just outstanding students. And we just, you know, always enjoy and look forward to the opportunity to give recognition to the young people, the outstanding young people that we have in our community. Again, you know, a lot of credit goes to the schools, but also to your parents who are here this evening. And so, you know, I don't have to tell you, Alan has already done it, but you know, you need to thank your parents for, you know, all of the support that they give you in doing the you know, amazing things that you're doing and have the opportunity to do. Because if it wasn't for them supporting you along the way, you know, it would be just that much harder, much more of a challenge for you to accomplish what you accomplished. So anyway, with that, I think we'll invite the city council members to come down and have their pictures taken with you as well. Do any of the parents want to say something?
I think the kids deserve the honors that they have received. I mean, we are here to support them wholeheartedly, but you guys have achieved what you have achieved. So congratulations.
We will continue to watch to see how this whole process works for you, and we'll be rooting for you to be, you know, the four among those handful, the 150 or 60 that are selected to actually receive the medallion. But you can be proud of what you've already accomplished. We're proud of you. So thanks again for being here, and you bet. Absolutely. You've got great schools. Thank you. You bet. Okay, we are still under public communications. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to public hearings, and we have no scheduled public hearings this evening. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have removed 2 items from the consent agenda. And with their removal, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Can you vote, please? Or Samantha, vote, please.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes,
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
motion passed. Let's pick up the two items that we removed from the consent agenda to the non-consent agenda first. The first being 6U, consider approval of collective bargaining agreement contract between the city of Johnston and Teamsters Local Union number 238 for July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2028.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I apologize, we didn't put this on the regular non-consent to begin with. We talked about it. Just kind of flipped a coin and couldn't decide which way to do it. So anyway. In the staff report that is in your packet, we tried to summarize the changes that were made with the contract, and it was very few changes, some language clarifications and cleanups. I think my descriptions and with the help of the chief and Cindy should be fairly clear unless you have a question on them. For as far as wage increases, the across the board wage increases, depending on what were dependent upon what step you were in. Steps 1 through 3 were 4, steps 4 and 6 were 5, and 7 and 8 were step 6. And we were trying, as you know, to get to our comparables in the market and or get close to our comparables. We've really always had, well, I shouldn't say always, but since I've been doing the comparable wages and doing our performance management plan, we've always tried to be within 5% of market, below or above, somewhere right in there. And so that's what we were trying to do. It is a 5-year contract with wages set for the first 3 years, and then a wage opener for the last 2 years for wages, insurance, and hours of work would be open. One of the things that we really talked about with these police officers was the fact that we know their schedule is rare. You know, they don't get weekends off. They get every 9th weekend off, I believe. 9th, is that correct, Cindy? I'm sorry. 2 out of 9 weekends off on their current schedule. And if you remember right, during budget time, the police chief went through a really good explanation and has shown you his 5-year staffing plan for the department. We didn't want to necessarily agree to fund that 5-year plan in the union contract at this point because we're not sure what's all going to be happening, but we know where he's trying to get. The officers are in support of his plan. They were in support of the idea that by year 3 of this contract, they are within 5% of the top pay of the comparable in the metro. Although that comparable works 2,080 hour year and our officer works a 2,210 hour year. So the wage is the same, and yet our guys are working 210 hours more. They understood that they know our hope is to get them to the point where they're not doing that anymore. And so that's why the extra language was put in here about hours of work. And the fact that we'll talk about that again when we reopen, because we hope we're further down the line with the police chief's plan and that we're gaining on his goal. And of course, our goal then would be to be comparable both hours and pay at that time versus, okay, I make as much as that person, but he works 210 hours less a year than I do. We want to be able to have them be comparable and with both issues, hours and pay. But by year 3, they're comparable in pay, not comparable hours. So we were able to reach an agreement our first day of negotiations with them. It was a very professional, very cordial negotiations as always. And we were definitely satisfied with this agreement, and it was well within the parameters of the council that you've given us. The cost then, when we did the detailed analysis of their wage and their step movements, was about 7.21, 7.5, and 7.95 over each of those years. So I'll answer any questions you may have.
Does council have any questions for Teresa?
So Teresa, one thing, so you have the chart that's in here that shows the wages, PO. So that looks like it's like an hourly wage. So it's just like 23.1 is 30.64, $30.64. So I guess is that like, if you converted the salary to an hourly wage, this would be an hourly wage, but they're paid as salary? How are they paid?
They're paid hourly.
They are paid out.
Yes.
Okay, then that's what's sort of confusing.
I'm sorry. They're paid hourly, but when we were negotiating with them, we would show them what that made for an annual salary. So our hourly wage times 2,210 hours equals the same annual wage for the city of West Des Moines at 2080. So we wouldn't show them hourly wages. We were showing them annual wages. And then we break it up in our schedule for hourly.
But the thing that gets us within 5% is the fact that they work additional hours, quite a bit, it's significantly additional hours. So it's, okay, that's helpful just to kind of from a standpoint of understand. Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions for Teresa?
Just to clarify, they work 130 additional hours. I think you said 210, but
Yes.
okay. I just want to make sure it's 130 over and
They
above.
work 2,210 hours. The other city works 2,080 hours. Yes.
Other questions, council? Well, Teresa, I want to thank you as well as Cindy and the chief for your good work in negotiating in this contract and doing it in a way that obviously was very professional, but very, very, quick and agreeable for parties on all sides. What's important is that we are able to recruit and retain good police officers into our community. And so, your attention and your special efforts here are much appreciated. And I know it's not, it didn't accomplish everything that they wanted to in year one, but again, under the chief's leadership, there's that trust that we'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
And it'll be important in making sure that we do retain and recruit, quality officers in our community. So thanks to all of you for your good work here. It's incredibly important to our community.
Pass that on to staff too. Our new assistant finance director is like a guru with Excel or something. And we have been running her through the paces with the spreadsheets and plastering it up on the TV in my office and working through and telling her to remove this step and move this step here and then add this percent. And we had her in there again today for quite some time. And of course, she's working on the other two contracts. So I'm going to pass on to her.
Please thank her.
that
We've seen
she's-
her work some of the magic,
Done some great work for us as well.
some of the meetings that we've had. So
Yeah, right.
Appreciate her good work as
I would
well.
just add as well, I mean, I think I certainly would echo the appreciation for Teresa and the chief, but I think also would to pass along thanks to the Teamsters.
We
as
did,
well
yes.
for the
But I
willingness to, I mean, I
shared
think
that
all
with
kind
them
of
as well.
to kind of come together and to be able to conclude it in one day.
it was wonderful. I don't know how to explain how our working relationship with them is just, it's just nice. I mean,
Well,
it's
and I
just-
think that's a real compliment.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that I feel really good about is that we've always been able to have really good working relationships with our employees, unionized or not. And I think that's not necessarily true in a lot of public environments across the country. And so I think that's something we should be really proud of. So.
So with that, do we have a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement contract between the city of Johnston and Teamsters?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Mayor, I would like to add, I won't reiterate what both you and Councilmember Cope already shared. My thanks to everyone as well. I also just want to kind of get on record here that while this is a separate issue than the entire staffing plan that the chief did present during budget time, I really hope that folks will take this seriously, that as we outline these next 3 years with delineated salaries or at least wage rates, that we also then take seriously our commitment to make sure that we're fully staffing these folks to get them to a point of absolute fairness, if at all possible. That discrepancy in hours worked and things like that is something that we need to continue to address. They came in good faith to make sure that we were doing so. And so this is the first step in that process. And I want to
Shared
make
that
sure
with
we do
them,
that.
and quite frankly, I think I put words in all of your mouths and saying that the night Dennis presented his budget to you folks, if you'd had the money, you would have the officers today.
Absolutely.
That you folks believe in the message Dennis is applying as well.
Well, actually, I think frankly, it's not just this action or the budget action. It's action we've taken over the last 10 years where we've historically added additional police officers. So I think there's a long history and track record there of providing additional officers that have helped. But I also don't disagree with you that we need to, this plan that has been outlined to us, we definitely need to take all efforts to implement. Thank you. And I think it's going to become even more serious that we try to follow through on this plan as those decisions get tougher and tougher to make in the upcoming budget years.
And the market is more competitive. You got it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion, for any further discussion? Samantha, vote please.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Pope.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item. Is it 5?
I think it's supposed to be.
5AA. Consider fixing date for a public hearing of the city of Johnston, Iowa for approval of the 2023 through 2024 maximum property tax dollars and providing for publication of notice thereof. Teresa?
Okay, on this particular issue, the city administrator and I talked about this at length last week a little bit, and on Friday morning, talked about it in our finance HR committee. And in our finance HR committee, we discussed the idea based on proposed legislation or legislative talk that maybe we want to at least have our regular general levy at the 810 limit. Oops. And then we, and the committee agreed with that idea. And then we talked about where we wanted the levy to be on the employee benefits. I guess to try to summarize it or to make it a little easier or briefer for the council to understand. Remember that this hearing is a hearing that is supposed to set the maximum property tax levy dollars we're going to levy. It is our full intent to support the council in only levying the dollars that we said we were going to levy January 17th, whenever our council meeting was. Issue right now is that we don't know if our valuation will be possibly changing or if some additional legislation may be changing, and whether we want to have that amount of money in the regular general line or whether we want a little bit of the money in what is called the emergency levy line, or whether we want in the employee benefit line. So the notice we would like to publish is a notice that says what our dollar amount would be based on the valuation we have received already for 810, which is the maximum it could possibly be for the regular general levy. We would like to say the maximum emergency levy is 27 cents. We'd like to say what that dollar amount is, which is this. I'm gonna make this a little bigger here. This $446,458 amount. And then the employee benefit line, I simply left in there the dollar amount that is the maximum dollar amount we need. I didn't change that. As far as we can tell, that won't be affected by anything. But it made this document look like our maximum levy could be 921. We all know that's not what you want. We all know that our maximum levy dollar amount of $15,244,076 is not what this council wants. We know that the dollar amount we agreed to on January 17th is more like 13,916,000. The issue is how we come up with that dollar amount if they give us a new valuation and where we're going to fall. And so it's unfortunately, we've gotten the message from the Department of Management that says we have to keep marching on because the March 31st deadline hasn't changed at this point. So it's not like I can just wait and decide. On the other hand, I and Mike don't want this council to make a decision that might hamstring us in years to come, which is why we are suggesting we go this route this year for the first time ever, which is this is the maximum we would do at this point. And so the mayor helped me tweak and correct the message properly. I was being too wordy as always. For the reason for the increase that would be in the paper. I think we're there now for a good explanation. And I think I'll sleep a little better for a night or two, knowing that I think that I've protected Johnston for a while till we know what is really kind of happening. What the Department of Management has said is we can't increase the dollar amounts or the levy amount. So if someone was at 810 already and they changed the valuation, they can't go back up over 810. They could always stay at the same dollar amount unless their levy is too much already. And so I was just trying to make sure that we're covered is the way I want to say it. So I'll quit talking and answer any questions you may have.
Council have any questions for Teresa?
So Teresa, this verbiage you're talking about, is that this explanation of significant increases
Yes.
to the budget?
Yes.
And the hard part is that, like, for instance, when we talk about the proposed increase of 7 cents would increase the property taxes paid by this home by $29.17. That's based on the rollback percentage of the 56.
Not changing, correct?
Right. And then and we expect that that's going to change. So that's the hard part is that even those numbers are those numbers are going to change. Because first of all, we're probably looking at a different number than 7 cents and then a different rollback percentage. It's just all kind of up in the air. So.
Yeah, which is why we thought, we don't know if it helped at all by saying, and I really, really appreciate Councilman Cope. I didn't get to listen to today, but I listened to last week. Really appreciated you having the data and handing it out and saying, this is the information and the only information cities received last October. And so we do say in here that the valuation data received in October. So that's the only information I had when I was able to type this. So that's how I would defend this discussion.
No, I'm just
And
reading down to this paragraph kind of for the
Yeah,
first time. So
Right.
and to me, I don't think, I'm not going to get too hung up on the wording because I think it's sort of hard know exactly what to say in there, but, no, that's fine, so.
Okay.
Is there any thought that, I mean, I've heard about this proposed possible legislation. And I've also heard they're planning to put it in, if they make some changes, they're planning on putting into effect right away. I'm sure there are people lobbying saying we need to have, the cities can't deal with this at an immediate. Is that going on that, you know, if you're going to make these kind of drastic changes, you need to give us at least a year?
Right. It did not work in the sense that they gave us,
30 days. And even that, none of this is passed. So when you say your deadline still is March 31st, that's because none of this other stuff is passed. Meanwhile, time is going by. I appreciate everything that you've been doing and the way you've kept up. You and Mike have, yes, I did Mike this time.
That's good. Thank you.
The way that you and Mike have explained it to us individually and as a group, I appreciate very much.
And part of what complicates all of this is that we're not just dealing with one piece of legislation. We're dealing with multiple pieces of legislation. And at this point, we don't know if any of them are going to pass or what.
Well, I mean, I think it's very highly likely that the bill changing the rollback, that's gonna pass. I mean, that is a definite bill that will pass, and I think will pass probably all the way through the legislative process.
There's still some question about whether or not they delay it for.
I think the question is whether they'll provide some backfill payment to the local governments to offset. I don't think they'll delay it a year because that would then result in.
Or even 30 days.
No, the 30 days, 30 days is one thing because that's still, I think they'll definitely delay it 30 days. I don't think they'll delay it a year. And I think there is a possibility, but it's less than 50% that they would backfill that lost revenue to local governments or even partially backfill it.
So that's one piece of legislation. It still hasn't been settled, and there's other pieces of legislation that are being filed that also complicate our budget decision-making.
Yeah, those are a little farther out in the impact, because those are, I'm not sure that those, but they certainly could impact us in the future years. So I think where some of this is attempting to do is position ourselves so that if those bills pass, that we're not locked into a position we're as well positioned as possible. I would defer to staff who put this together, but to me, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's, you know, the legislation that's being discussed, and I think the bill that's most significant impact at the Capitol it's a Senate Study Bill 1124, and it's a property tax bill that's been filed in the Ways and Means Committee. Makes some pretty radical, and it may not be the right word, but it's a pretty significant changes to the property tax system. And kind of the way it combines levies, and some levies it kind of limits and others it doesn't, I think really could make a significant impact on our ability to manage our city over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so I think to proactively be prepared for that, as we're trying to do here with the max levy, and that bill we won't know the outcome of that bill until probably sometime in April. And you got the House and the Senate, and they have different versions of their property tax bills. So I think we should try to be patient. I think we should take advantage of the 30 days that I'm pretty sure we're going to get, and not settle on a budget sooner rather than later, or later rather than sooner, because I think that allows us to do it in the most responsible way. But also this max levy is a max levy, and that's everybody, you've heard a lot of people talk about that is like, I do work on behalf of the Capitol for other local governments. So as I've heard from other finance directors, wow, it's a max levy. We always just put the maximum amount you could charge, which in theory, it could be $100 for your tax rate, because, you have uncapped levies. And so.
and we're only using there's some cities that do that for all the levies that they would never even use.
Right.
We're only proposing, the only new one we're proposing is this emergency levy. The other two levies we've used, so.
Right. And so again, a responsible approach, but it's a good balance of responsible, but also maintaining our flexibility, which I think is the right approach. So
I just like to assert, I know I can sense in your comments that you and staff struggled on this as to how to best do this. I want to say thank you, because the increasing amount of moving targets of legislation and what may be unknown years ahead of us, let alone 2 months from now, has made your job near impossible. And you're trying to make sure that we don't get painted into a corner, and yet that we still maintain the absolute utmost transparency to the taxpayers that we can in such an uncertain time. You're doing everything we would expect and hope to make sure that the citizens of Johnston and the city of Johnston is moving forward. Thank you for that. We don't like this uncertainty either. We know that this will provide for those that are very much scrutinizing tax levies, are going to criticize this type of announcement, if for no other reason because they'll claim it's insincere or that isn't exactly what we're going forward. But quite frankly, we have no other choice until we have more information. And because we have to follow the timelines that are set forth in Iowa code right now, we're going to be the good steward and do that part as well. So again, I can't reiterate enough how thankful I am that you're trying to be as proactive as possible so that we can be as responsible and responsive as possible as we get more information moving forward. Well done.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Teresa or Mike, can you give us a little guidance on what motion needs to be made here? Other than just setting the hearing date, okay. So do we have a motion to fix the hearing date, the public hearing date for the approval of the 2023-24 maximum property tax dollars?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Samantha, vote please.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes. Motion passed. Item 7B, consider resolution number 23-28, initiating an official zoning map amendment to rezone 18.26 acres located in the 5400 block and the 5500 block of Mulvey Road from C1 and C2 by referring to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and recommendation. Clayton.
Good evening. Typically, you would see an initiate rezoning on your consent agenda. However, this is proposal is to eliminate an entire PUD, planned unit development district, and rezone to our standard base districts. And this does involve multiple property owners. Really, the basis for this is there's a site plan submittal in for a car wash development on the corner of Northwest 55th Avenue and Merle Hay Road, that southeast corner there. Pull up a map. And that's really what initiated us acting on this at this time. And this has been a PUD that was identified as a candidate to be eliminated as part of our overall zoning code update. And normally we would like to do it as part of our adopting a new zoning map, but because it's a PUD, we can do it as a separate process. So that's why you're seeing it like this in front of you tonight. So just out of an abundance of transparency, we wanted to have this on your non-consent agenda so that you are aware of what's going on here. And this would just refer it to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and recommendation.
Did you say 54th Avenue or
55th.
55th?
55th,
And it's the south corner
correct,
for another car wash.
correct. And, I should back up. Currently the PUD has some language that allows for uses of the C1, C2, and C3 zoning district, but there is an explicit language saying convenience stores with fuel sales, vehicle washing, and vehicle repair are prohibited. You might recall that I think it was in 2022, just this past year, we amended the C2 district to allow for car washes. And so there was just some ambiguity between what our current code says and what the PUD says that really just needed some clarification there. That, because I mean, it's a car wash. It's not part of a convenience store, so there's maybe, but I'll stop there.
I'm confused because I'm looking at this map. And I thought the area that was zoning was the area where the current school administration building is.
No, that's a separate P to the north.
So there's a car wash coming into this area too.
There's a proposal for Silver Star Car Wash, which is the single tunnel automated bay car wash. There's no active site plan submittals on the school district property, though it is our understanding that it's under contract, however.
Okay, I was confused.
Really, all the PUDs up along Merle Hay Road are near-term plan to get eliminated and go back to a standard zoning district. This one's just happening a little more in advance than those other ones because we have an active development proposal.
And this is a recent proposal. They know we already have a car wash.
It just came in on 2 Fridays ago.
And there's like 3 over there, on 70th and Grimes. Yeah. So if we said no, then the car wash wouldn't be allowed.
That's where the ambiguity comes in because the language of the PUD says convenience stores with fuel sales, vehicle washing, and vehicle repair. There's not a convenience store associated with it.
No, it's just a standalone.
Car wash, which
Automated
is allowed in
car
the C2 district. So there's a little ambiguity there, and we probably have to look to our legal counsel on what our recourse would be in that case.
Well, as I read it, there's no convenience store, so it says convenience stores with fuel sales, vehicle washing, or automobile repair. No convenience store. It's in the, to me, that would be triggered by this.
That's kind of where we were, but it is a little gray. So just out of abundance of caution, our recommendation was to expedite eliminating this PUD back to the C2 just to eliminate that confusion. Though there is not a convenience store associated with it, so staff's determination, at least this so far, has been that there's no convenience store, therefore car wash is allowed because the C2 allows it.
You're saying the car wash is allowed currently.
Yes, but it's a little there's just that a little bit of the confliction there because you could not have a car wash with a convenience store, but you could have a standalone car wash. It's referring back to language from 1997, and this, I think this is a case of why PUDs, we try to avoid them as well because over time, our standard zoning code changes, and then but the PUD doesn't update to reflect that as well, and then you get these conflictions. And so the action tonight is simply just referring it to Planning and Zoning Commission for review and recommendation. This would come back before the city council following that process where you would have an opportunity to make a final decision.
Well, I'm going to support referring it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And as I read this, since it says to me that the P currently allows for the C2 zoning district, which includes single tunnel or single bay automated car washes, whether it's a PU or it's zone C2, either way, a single tunnel car wash would be allowed. Now, that being said, if somebody wanted to make a point, boy, we're going from 0 car washes to 3 potentially on Merle Road, wants to make that point. That's not an illegitimate point. But I'm not sure. I think you end up there either way. When you have C2.
I was not in favor of the other car wash because I felt it detracted from the pedestrian approach that we want along Merle Hay. And so I agree though, with Councilman Cope, we should refer it to the planning and zoning for clarification, 100%. That's the next step.
But I think that's part of it. It's always sort of challenging. Once you open up and say, okay, single tunnel car washes, but you can't limit it to two, right? You could have
Oh, 100%. I understand. And as a business owner, I would think that they would know that there's only going to be a certain amount of customers and they're going to be fighting over a slimmer margin. But that's the way it goes. Same with convenience stores.
Like, just for clarification, you may have mentioned it. I apologize while I was trying to get my bearings on that aerial map. The individual landowners that currently have parcels in that PUD, do they have to give any kind of consent or blessing for the removal of an entire PUD?
No, because city code allows for a council initiated rezoning, which this would be. Okay. Back to all of our rezoning technically are, because we just bring them all to you. But we will provide notice to them. They will have an opportunity to participate in the process. And this was a PUD in an area we had provided notice for during the open house for the zoning code update, even in advance of doing this. So they will have multiple opportunities, and we've had communications with the property owners and haven't received any negative feedback thus far.
As far as you're aware, there is no use occurring within this PUD that could or would be in conflict with what you're proposing as far as that rezoning. It couldn't have happened because of the conditions within the PUD, such as the C2 district, et cetera.
To my knowledge, all existing remain in compliance with the zoning code of the C2.
Okay.
But we will certainly double check that as we progress through this process.
How many of these PUDs tend to have sort of a council directed reversal of PUD as a result of our zoning process?
So I believe we have around 50 plan unit developments currently throughout the community, and we've identified about half of them, about 25 as candidates to be eliminated. And just rezone back to. Yes.
So you're anticipating to have 25 council directed rezonings?
We have not fully fleshed out the process on how we're gonna handle each individual in particular. Some of those might be combine them into one action. So those items are being fleshed out, but the anticipation would be those would occur post adoption of the new zoning code. And if not for the proposed development here, we would have taken this PUD and put through that same process. But just with that active development proposal, we felt warranted just cleaning it up at this time as well.
I'm failing to understand, though, you have an active proposal on the table that apparently the PUD does not preclude. So we're doing this as a matter of convenience before we actually get the zoning ordinance approved. That would actually be the natural process for this, as well as 24 other PUDs. What's the rush? Why so much that we have to go through a totally different process than one that you have designed or perfected?
Because we have not flushed out the process for the rest of them yet. And they might be that we have to do 25 separate actions to get rid of each PUD. So this certainly could wait, but there's also doesn't really appear to be any harm in acting on it now.
I guess the only
Flip a coin.
the harm, harm, but my hesitation has nothing to do with car wash, because I think car wash is a lot of, but I'm hesitant to have a council directed. I like it. Historically, the zoning is brought to us by a property. And you have several property owners in this area. And to me, I would prefer to have a couple or property owners as part of the process, and they don't seem to be part of the process. I understand that doesn't really impact their property, but I'm not a big fan of sort of messing with the council of this process.
And to clarify, the Denny Elwell company who owns the property that the car wash would be in, as well as other property here on the south, they have signed on to this and requested it as well. So it's not without lack of property request, though the majority have not signed on. There was one out of the 5 property owners.
One has opposed it or just didn't sign on?
One has requested it.
Okay.
4 have not signed on, but they have not also opposed. They would have the opportunity to be part of the processing and provide opposition and submit formal opposition if so desired.
So Clayton, the 24 other that would go through a similar process, would those also be council initiated?
Most likely, yes. And because many of those, they're residential PUDs, Green Meadows West, Green Meadows North. And some of those PUDs, it just says, the property shall, I'm gonna use Green Meadows North, for example, because I'm thinking of that one right now. The property shall be developed according to the R160 standards, except that corner lots shall have a reduced side yard setback on one side. And we're addressing that in our standard zoning code where we would not be creating any non-conformity. But in order to go out and get potentially hundreds of signatures from people, that's,
Well, no, I'm not, I mean,
so,
residential, yeah, but you have a homeowners association, there's ways to communicate that process. I'm just kind of trying to wrap my arms around a council initiative.
and, you know, I guess if it helps you, just initiating the rezoning by council action does not have to be the same as you supporting the rezoning. You can,
No, I understand
yeah,
that, right?
so.
Well, I'm okay with it forward to start the process, but I think a little bit about how we go about doing this.
Sounds like there needs to be some discussion about these 25 people that need to be eliminated.
Yeah.
So whether it's, I don't know which council committee to
Economic development?
Probably economic development, but we've been focused on getting the code done. We're not there yet.
And so the only reason this one is here tonight is because of the car wash and the request from one of the property owners to invalidate the P.
Correct. And it's a good chance to dip our toes in the water and learn what we can do better for the remaining PUDs that are identified as candidates. But I like your suggestion, we can arrange to have this an economic development committee for further discussion on that process.
Is there a reason why this PUD could not be lifted though after the car wash is even constructed? If it's if other council action and planning zoning action or whatever is needed proceeds forward. I'm really questioning why the rush. I do not understand why we need to do this when the PUD as written there doesn't seem to preclude their intended use.
David, do you think it would be fine if it's delayed with the rest of them as well?
Yeah, I don't think Clayton and I necessarily agree on the restrictions in the current PUD.
Okay.
Yeah, but my initial reaction when looking at it was, this just needs to be rezoned so it's clean, so we don't have an ambiguity.
Okay.
I mean, you could just rezone one parcel and remove it from the PUD, but it's Clayton and I talked, I mean, that just seems that like 6 months from now, we're coming back in and getting rid of the rest of it. It's not affecting, they're already there today. It seems like it's cleaner to do it once and be done with it.
Well, perhaps I can suggest that we can work with Christine, review the PUD and provide further clarification on that question. And whether or not this does happen, but Sure. But for the meantime, staff would recommend initiating and getting it referred to P and Z.
Well, I'll make a motion to, for PZ case 2306, the Planning and Zoning Commission, initiate rezoning.
That's a motion to approve resolution number 2328.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second, further discussion? Samantha, vote please.
Burkhart. Pope,
Yeah. Yes.
Evans,
No.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready.
Yeah, you have me as a yes vote.
Yep.
Okay, so there's 3 yeses.
So Suresh text me yes.
Motion passed 4-1. Moving on to item 7C, consider.
Mayor, can I make a comment? The only reason I held out on that was because there is one resident that lives there that is right next to the car wash that I know she's not happy with this. So I need more information before I can support it. So that's it.
That's great. I kind of wish you'd shared that before we had the vote.
Kind of motion got before I could speak. So
Okay, sorry, but fair enough.
Moving on to 7C, consider approval of resolution number 2321, initiating a text amendment to consider repealing and replacing chapters 165 through 180. The Johnston zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, refer the case to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the recommendation, and hereby setting March 6, 2023 at 7:00 PM as the date and time for a public hearing.
Good evening. And normally we don't talk about these kind of things, but this is a pretty big item and we want to make sure there's time for questions, discussions, and make sure if there's any concerns that the council has, we can talk through those. As we talked about in the work session, we're in the final stages of cleaning up a couple of minor amendments to the proposed zoning code. Based on and following the feedback we received from the public during the public comment period. The Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled to hold their public hearing a week from tonight, February 13th at 7 PM to consider a recommendation to bring this forward to you. Normally, we would wait until their action before you would set the public hearing. But we wanted to get this out so we could publish it and make sure everyone was well aware that this was the date. We've been posting it as tentative, but we really wanted to get ahead of this one and get these dates set. So I'd be happy to take any questions or comments that the commission has, or excuse me, the council has. If there's any questions or concerns with any of the code areas, I'd be happy to address those as well.
Council, have any questions for David?
No, go ahead.
David, just to elaborate on the timeline that you expressed, if there's feedback at the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they propose making any modifications, we will then be able to address those modifications in the public hearing, correct? And that will give enough notice of that.
Yeah, and they were a little concerned when I talked to them, like, well, we'll have 3 public hearings because the next 2 items are 2 more public hearings. And we handle that all in one night. And I said, well, I think so, but if you get concerned, you could just continue the hearing until your next meeting. There's a meeting, there's 2 meetings between tonight and when this would come before the council. So I believe we have plenty of time to get through that. And any changes they make, we'll highlight those for you. And obviously, as always, you're able to make amendments as well as the ordinance comes before you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councilman.
I do have an item that has not, I think it's been brought up at maybe the previous, but I didn't get a chance to put it on to comment, and it has to do with grading. As we on the council know, there has been times when trees will be cut down, kind of major tree removal operations happen, but they happen before a grading permit is applied for. And I don't think it's any secret that the reason for this might be because someone thinks that if the trees were there, they'd get in the way of an approval for a project. And I don't have to name names, but it's happened at least twice since I've been on the council since 2018 that after the trees were cut down and left as piles of brush and stumps, then grading permits for the project were applied for. So I'm wondering if we could have something that said, and basically I can go on Google Maps right now and I can look at histories and I can see trees that are then down, and then the next thing you know, there's a project. I'm wondering if the way, if you've come up with ways to close this loophole, or is there a way to say, have you done any major tree removals? And I'm not talking about a single tree that is dead, struck by lightning, whatever. I'm talking about wholesale clearing of a lot prior to application for a grading permit. Is there a way for us to do something about that if it happens within 18 months of the plan submittal? Or is this totally out of left field?
Well, I don't know which, we can talk offline on which particular properties, but if there's mass tree clearing, they need grading permit by definition.
I'd be happy to tell you which ones they are. I mean, we know about them. One was on Beaver Avenue, Northwest Beaver. And it was before a storage building was built. And the other one used to be a vet clinic on Merle Hay Road. And both of them had all their plant material taken off in the one or 2 days. And it was before the grading. So, you know, the definition of a grading permit is you are disturbing the ground. It's not you are cutting down the tree.
No, there's a it's included in there.
Is it?
Yeah.
So what's our penalty?
It would fall under our, there's a tree replacement requirement.
Okay. Well, we'll
But the
talk.
storage building, I believe we applied that to that one. And I'd have to go back to the file.
Okay.
That kind of leads into my question. So when I had emailed earlier today, it said that you refer to section 181.04 and 190. Those are not included in tonight's stuff, right?
Yeah, they're on the code draft. Is everything, it would be everything from chapter 165 to chapter 199, I believe.
So it's one of the it's an attachment to agenda item 7C.
Yep.
Code draft.
Code draft full February 2023.
But the thing says consider approval resolution chapters 165 through 180.
We're repealing and replacing, that's their current code chapters. So our current code runs from chapter 165 through 180. Our new code, we've separated it differently. It's going to run from chapter 165 through 199. All right, probably should have clarified that a little better. We've added chapter 180 right now is our last section in the code. And so we had room to keep adding chapters. And so we broke things up a little bit more. So it was easier to find information.
Other questions for David?
Well, I guess back to Council Person Martin's question. Are you suggesting that, I do think that you should have robust penalties prior to having an approved, not just applying, approved. Can they have those types of penalties in place or enforcement? And this kind of also goes kind of going your email about kind of people doing things on property they're not supposed to do, right? So how do we, to me, it's
Well,
really,
and refer to the 181.04 tree protection. And reading through this, one of the problems we had on a previous development was the guy ripped out all the trees and then told to replace them. He put so many in, and then, it says here it's a 3-year warranty, whatever, but then the developer sold the lots and the tree died. And the person that bought the lot, he didn't care. I mean, the penalty's a joke. It's not, there's no teeth in it. It doesn't carry on from one owner to the next. So that development, there's maybe, I would say 1/16 of the trees that were planted that are still there. And the rest are dead and they're gone and they've never been replaced. And there's no teeth. It's like the penalty, there's no.
Right, and I think sometimes it's hard, like, somebody plants a tree, the developer plants a tree, they sell the lot to a homeowner, and the tree dies, the homeowner decides not to replace it. I'm not sure we can require the homeowner to spend money to replace a tree. I'm just not sure we can go that far, but I do think that, you start by saying, if you do grading on the property before you have an approved, it should be a financial penalty of some sort to prevent people from doing that. And then then that helps you kind of make them know that they can't sort of wipe away trees before, without kind of some approved grading permit from the city.
Oh, but they could also sell that lot. They could, okay, here's my lot. I'm gonna make it more attractive to a commercial development. I'm gonna go out there and technically, I didn't dig anything, but I did cut everything on the property down to the ground. And then I sold it. There won't be anything to go back to there.
Right, and is that some stop?
I doubt it, but but the ones that do it purposefully, just to get around our tree protection rules, which I have to say, I think we do a very good job with working with developers. I don't know that there's anybody here that tied themselves to a specific tree and said it couldn't go. I mean, we're not unreasonable. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm kind of insulted that people are trying to play this poll, and it does feed very well into Councilman Evans' issues too. Promises were made, the property gets sold, there's no one to go back to. Now it's different, and the city I will say, the city's doing an excellent job when there are developments like Bricktown and other building sites where the plant material has died off. And with one email from a homeowner saying, it looks like there's a lot of dead trees, they can go out there and those trees are every bit as part of that, part of the city requirements, and their continuing requirements. And they can require those of that owner because it was part of that development. And I think, and if that Quick Trip got sold, they could still go back and say, you're out of compliance. It would be the same thing as if their public bathrooms weren't working. Doesn't matter who owns it now, you still have to take care of it. So that works really well.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it makes sense for us to ensure that you should be grading on a property until you have improved.
And if our grading definition says tree removal, great.
Fine clearing. Require that. I'll go make sure it's
Okay.
clear. But yeah, we specifically and that's actually the next item, but that falls under other chapters outside of zoning.
Okay.
But we'll make sure that's clear. But that's how it is in the current ordinance, and that'll be the intent going forward. Clearing a property require a grading permit.
Grading permit includes clearing.
Yeah.
The vegetation, trees included.
Clearing talks about damage inflicted upon the root system, application of substances, toxic treatment of vegetation, operation of equipment and vehicles, storage of temporary structures. Rod.
Okay.
Councilman Evans, to your point, on the one particular case, there's cleaning that happens, there's a violation that happens. there's a plan that has to come back to the council for replacement. We would never approve that type of plan again. I think Clayton would attest to that because it's been an administrative nightmare and it's been wrought with issues. And so we'll do better on that next time. And that's a plan that has to come.
No, that's fine. And, no, that's how we learn.
Yeah.
And one other thing I was just thinking, because this developer got away. I mean, we all know that. But there is a homeowners association. So maybe when a developer does something like this, you know, the warranty rolls to the homeowners association.
Yeah,
Or-
what we
or
would
not,
want to
I don't
prevent
know.
is the responsibility being put on individual homeowners that aren't homeowners there yet. I mean, that was the real issue in this particular case.
Yeah.
But you know, we did make some other changes to to the tree preservation as well, right? You want to summarize those? Just for clarity, so our current chapter 145, which is our one of the next agenda items, started out as kind of erosion control, and everything got lumped into it. And so the next item we'll talk about, we split things up into very clear chapters. The one thing that is moving into zoning is the tree clearing and the tree preservation and the protection, and then the penalties for if you don't do that. So that part is moving into zoning, and then the rest we'll talk about the next agenda item. We're moving elsewhere, but sorry.
So within the tree protection section, that's 18104 of the code full draft, if you want to look it up. There remains status for revocation of protected tree status. So any tree 6-inch caliper or larger is automatically protected in the city and would require approval for removal. And this is the kind of the criteria we can consider. Those have not really changed from the current code, with the exception that we have worked with the tree board to provide a desirable tree and shrub list and a prohibited and temporarily restricted tree and shrub list to better guide us on trees. And pretty much if it's a prohibited tree or you can cut it down, we want that thing gone. It's probably a nuisance type tree. So some of these are automatic, hey, you can cut them down, but unless you're fitting into one of those automatic categories, it's going to come to council for final decision making. But there's really not much of a change in the criteria. We have clarified and worked on the credit for preserving and protecting trees, as well as the protection requirements for trees, by making sure that the critical root areas of those trees to be preserved remains healthy. What we want to avoid is that construction activity encroaching too close into trees that we want to see saved, and then they're just killing off the tree.
Did you include how to calculate the critical root zone?
Yes, it's the radius is 1 foot,
for every
1 foot
caliper?
per 1-inch caliper.
Right.
60% of that is the critical root zone.
And the critical root zone is different than the strip line. That's all defined in there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's in here. And the existing code was a little light on how we had on critical root zone. It just kind of gave a distance, but didn't really have a basis for it. So through some research, just tried to get a little more precise into making sure that we're providing enough root health for these trees to be preserved. The replacement requirements are also in here as well. Those remain the same number wise. We're requiring a performance bond. I think to get to your case, there was we added in a need that they have to bond for the trees as well. And we added in and guaranteed for 3 years from date of installation. That was an addition based on that past precedent there. And then, so whoever violates it is responsible for a period of 3 years from installation.
But if they sell it,
Whoever had the violation, they are responsible. They have to provide a guarantee for 3 years.
that, I didn't see that in here.
We might need to clarify who's responsible for that, but there is the 3 years guarantee, but I think we need to clarify that it's. Yeah. We can get that clarified, because the intent there is that whoever does the violation has to provide the guarantee for 3 years.
Yeah. Part that really got me tricked. I was really excited to see that.
And that's actually in current code as well.
I love that. And so it says if the improvements are not completely set forth between the temporary occupancy permit may be withdrawn and or bond exercised. What is a temporary occupancy permit?
That's typically saying that, hey, you've met all your building conditions, it's a safe structure, but there might be zoning requirements such as landscaping, which is yet to be completed. We typically use those on commercial and multifamily projects where they want to take occupancy of the building in the middle of winter, such as right now when it's not a prime time to plant. And we put a 6-month window on that, typically saying, hey, you shall have this planted within 6 months and you got to provide a bond that you complete. If you don't do that, we're going to exercise that bond and go plant it ourselves.
Okay, the only other thing I had was, and Dave, you had replied to me earlier in the email, and you said, in general, you're correct, we don't have an overarching requirement to be a good neighbor. And I'm gonna ask or propose that I would be glad to sit with anybody in this room to create some kind of a good neighbor statement or policy or something that we can have in this plan. Because the fact, I don't know if it's even, I don't know if other communities do that. I just don't know, but I think it's important. I don't know how to get there, but just throwing it out.
I don't know how to codify it. I mean, we can brainstorm that, figure out if there's some options.
Well, and certainly kind of some of the issues I talked about earlier session about solar fields and with ground-based solar energy, communicating with the neighbors ahead of time. You know, that's I'm consistent with that. So
Exactly. And I don't know how we do it. If it's a meeting or if it's a, I don't know, but
well, I think your suggestion, maybe there's some a road, maybe there's somebody has something out there that you guys might be able to track down starting point. And if not, then you gotta start from scratch. It might be helpful if there's a, you know, and that's what old fashioned internet search sometimes provides.
And we can look, and my biggest hesitation is where it falls in the code and what teeth it has. You know, I don't know. I'm not envisioning something that's going to have a lot of teeth to it, but it would maybe be more of a statement of intent than anything. So we'll talk with Christine about placement of it. Maybe do a little research, see if we can find something.
we'll use that word misdemeanor. Thank you.
Voluntary get enforced by a misdemeanor.
One other thing I wanted to point out on the tree protection that I didn't mention, we do have reference to that in our new chapter 88, which is your next agenda item. So grading and erosion and sediment control does reference back to unauthorized removal of trees. So anytime you're required to have a grading permit, those provisions still apply. So it's not just site plan plats, really anytime that you're doing grading, those are still applicable. So we do have that cross reference built into the code.
While we're talking about grading permits, clarify, those can technically and are approved at the discretion of the zoning administrator. My role, I can require them to come to council, and I will tell you, anytime someone comes in with a grading permit that's doing mass clearing, it's coming for discussion, and that's an open approval, just as a matter of practice. So, you don't want to see all the grading permits. Right. We have some really long agendas, and unhappy developers have to wait a couple of weeks for stuff, but on those are always great. And the bombers would be an example. Technically, administratively, we could approve that, but brought that to council.
I have no problem with the way you've been doing things. I'm pretty sure these ones that got through didn't know about.
I'll double check the one on Beaver though. I thought we required placements over there. I don't remember the specifics.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2321?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7D, consider resolution number 2322, setting a public hearing for March 6, 2023 at 7:00 PM to consider repealing and replacing chapter 102, storm drainage system, chapter 103, stormwater management utility, chapter 145, post-construction stormwater management, and chapter 151, tree protection and conservation.
Good evening. This is associated with the zoning code changes. What we started with was really looking at our stormwater management requirements that largely fell in chapter 145 currently, as well as tree protection, which we talked about in chapter 151. As we looked at that and as we looked at how other cities organized it, our stormwater chapters actually fall under sanitary sewer, and there's only three chapters available right there. And so what we wanted to do was put everything stormwater related collectively together in the code. And so the first two, the chapter 102 and 103, we're really not making any changes to those codes. We're just moving them where they live in the code. So we can then expand the additional two chapters that we want to add with right titles there. Chapters 87 would be post-construction stormwater management. So those would be our stormwater requirements. And then chapter 88, erosion and sediment control. And as I mentioned earlier, all of those plus tree protection are all kind of lumped into 145 today, and it's just really hard to use. And so we really tried to separate those and break those out. One thing I would note under stormwater utility, we are just moving that, but that ordinance actually had language that we had to do an analysis of the fund every 10th year, and it had a date in there, which we actually do an analysis of the fund every year. So we did make a little tweak to that language. It's under 8612, and if you want a red line, we can pull it, but it actually referenced a date, which was in 2022 when we had to do it. And as I said, we do it every year, so we did clean up that language. Otherwise, those chapters really haven't changed. Technically, 3 of these areas don't require a public hearing. Stormwater management does, because we're adopting Iowa Stormwater Management Manual, and there's a requirement under state code if we're adopting a standard code that we have to do a public hearing. And so as a matter of transparency, we thought it would be best if we just collectively did a public hearing to cover all these changes. With that, I'll stop and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for David?
So I'm reading 88.06 grading pit permit required. And I don't see any reference to clearing.
Need that clearing then. I already made that note.
Okay, I was gonna say, I didn't see it.
I think it's covered elsewhere, but I think
Because then if you go up to the definition, which is on page, I don't see a page number here, but under definition, you have grading defined. Grade or grading means any excavation, filling, or combination thereof. So it has no mention of clearing, but then clearing is very specific on what's happening there. And so,
So to help with that, 8806, kind of that first line, unless accepted by the provisions of 808, you have to have a permit. So we jumped down to 8808. So unless it meets one of these criteria, a grading permit's required.
oh, okay.
the exceptions. Furtherance of a horticulture activity, work by a public utility.
Okay, I get it.
One
I
thing
just
that,
missed it.
one thing we have changed is clarify when the grading permit triggers, and we've established that at 10,000 square feet, which is consistent with the post-construction stormwater management standards, that is chapter 7, with a few exceptions there. If you're disturbing in areas of steep slopes, erosive soils or soil characteristics, or if you're in any stream buffers, drainage ways, or floodplain, that's a 0 square foot. You have to have a grading permit in those areas. But unless you're otherwise, it's just that 10,000 square feet is trigger.
It's a little less than 2 acres. Oh, 46, yeah, oh, it's a quarter, okay. That was way off. All right,
Yeah, so between 10,000 square feet and an acre, you'd have to have a city grading permit. After an acre, you need a city grading permit and a state MPDS permit.
okay.
Other questions for David? If not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2322?
So second,
Motion and a second for the discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Reddy,
Yes.
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Evans, Martin.
yes,
Motion passed. Item 7E, consider approval of resolution number 2323, setting a public hearing for March 6, 2023 at 7:00 PM to consider adopting an official zoning map.
Good evening, and this goes to our earlier conversation a little bit. We did meet with Christine a couple of weeks ago and talk through process. And as council is aware, as part of the adoption of the new code, we'll be getting rid of the R190, the R1A, the R1150, the CO, PC, IC, and the MUC districts, as well as the Merle Hay Road overlay district. So those are district-wide changes that those districts will go away. And in reviewing our current code and how we've drafted the new code, the council has the ability to act on district-wide changes. So we can basically adopt a new zoning map that would change any of those districts to a district that falls within the new zoning code. So we don't have to do those individually. We don't have to initiate individually all of those changes. I think there's close to 300 properties, largely because the Merle Hay Road overlay covers so much that are affected. We've already, all of those folks were notified before we went to the open house. We've talked with a lot of them. I don't know that we've come across, other than the R1A concerns, anybody that's had a concern with those districts, changing. And so what we're proposing is the third hearing and then the third ordinance that would happen as part of this process would be your adoption of that new zoning map. So any of those properties, and I don't have a good map that shows just those. The map book includes a lot of the other ones we want to follow up with after as well. We're working on finalizing the map this week. Any of those districts that are going away would be replaced with a new district. We do that through a process whereby we just adopt a new map. And that'll save us a whole lot of money on publication alone, because otherwise we'd have to legally define all of those parcels. So it's procedurally much easier process. That will shorten the amount of rezoning that has to happen after to sort of carry through with it. And we do intend to follow up on that, as I mentioned earlier. Our priority has really been getting through this stage. Probably take a minute to take a breath, and then we'll come forward with a game plan of doing the rest of the cleanup as well.
Any questions for David? Not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2323?
I move.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
yes,
Reddy.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7F, consider approval of claims in the amount of $1,609,500.85.
second,
Have a motion and a second. Discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Coe,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
yes,
Reddy.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passed. City administrator comments. comments?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just one quick update. Would like to introduce Peter Johnston tonight to council. Peter is our new Economic Development Project Manager. He's been with the city for about a month and a half, 2 months now. 2 months tomorrow. There you go. So just want to welcome Peter to our team.
Welcome, Peter.
I look forward to it.
Well, we want to welcome you back as well. And so far, you've shown that you can do the job and you're living up to the task. So thank you for being part of the team.
And Matt would like to give a quick update also to council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a couple of emails that we received from the Metro Waste Authority since the last council meeting. They did send out the new rates for our solid waste rates for fiscal year 23-24. They are going to be an increase of 4%. It would have been higher, but we do have in the contract a 4% cap. So a 48 gallon container went from 1007 up to 1049. And the larger container, your 96 gallon container, went from 1068 to 1113. Then we also received the Kerbit rates that'll be effective July 1, 2023. And those are going to increase by 22 cents from $4.32 up to $4.54, which is a 5% increase. And I can circulate these emails to the council as well. We just wanted to give you an update to what we received. Thank you.
Any other staff comments? Anything else? Councilman Martin.
Thanks for the great snow removal. Been a while since it came down, but it was a good job. Thank you. Always appreciate that when I get up and it's all been taken care of. That's all I have.
Councilman Burkhart.
The only thing I want to add, and hopefully you'll add to your calendars, April 29th is a Saturday. That is the scheduled date for Culture Day. Last year, I know I announced it as Culture Evening. The Johnston Community School District Core Group has put on this event last year. It was an absolute awesome event to see all of the diversity and multicultural representation that we have within our community, within our schools. They've expanded the time frame a little bit now from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. on that April 29th at the Johnston High School. So
So that's from 2 to 8.
2 to 8.
And that's April
29.
the exact location.
At the high school.
Councilman Cole.
I just want to express appreciation for Chief McDaniel for the statement that he put out on Friday, January 27th, following the death of Tyree Nichols. I thought the statement was one, especially the detail in which he outlined all the different strategies that the police department here in Johnston goes about to make sure that that horrible thing that we saw happen to a young man in Memphis, Tennessee, never happens here. And as I know, as much as we're saddened and sort of disturbed by what happened, I know that nobody's more saddened and disturbed than Chief Daniel and the officers of the Johnston Police Department. And that's, I just really appreciate not only the statement, but everything that's been for us every day to ensure that all Johnston residents feel safe in our community.
Councilman Allen. I'm Ronald.
I just want a couple of things. I wanted to say thanks to those that, helped with the situation with our friends to the north. And then sitting at the kitchen table and talking to some people who have, very, very deep roots with our community. I know it meant a lot to them. We would take the time to join them in their home. That lady hasn't sang, so we'll see what happens, but it was a combined effort, staff, Mike, mayor, it was, interesting. And then just for fun, I Googled, being a good neighbor, and Iowa City has a heck of a program. And it's right there, and it basically says everything that, and I know you were probably kidding when you said be a good neighbor in quotes, but it looks like it's actually a real thing. So that's it. Thank you.
I know I already spoke. But I didn't want to push. Press my- That hard.
We're not done yet.
Right. I thought.
Councilman Redding.
I'll pass. My internet is so bad I can't do any comments here. Sorry. I'll pass.
The only thing that I would add is I think you're all aware that the Adjutant General at the National Guard has retired. His official last day was on Saturday, and there was a nice reception out at Camp Dodge. Recognize him in his retirement. So he's excited to go into retirement. Among other things, I do know that they are going to get into beekeeping because I've had some conversation with his wife about beekeeping, but I know that he received a lot of woodworking type of items as retirement gifts. So I think he plans on doing some of that as well as just some general, hobby farming and other things also. And that at the same time, we do have a new Adjutant General, Steve Osborne. So we'll be obviously Brigadier General Osborne, has been at the Guard for some time and is already a friend of the city, but we'll continue to build that relationship with him in his new capacity as well. So is there anything else to come before the council? If not, we are adjourned. Thanks all.
So, Eric, maybe.